Hello again. This is Linda Stern from the Stern Family Collection. And there's John Stern, noted art historian. Today we're going to talk about a very important woman artist, someone who really needs more attention than she's gotten over the years. Elsie Palmer Payne, who lived from 1884 to 1971, was the wife of the famous artist Edgar Payne. And as it went in those days, many times the women took a little bit of a second whatever. But she was a very important artist, and here's John to tell you about her contributions to art.
Hello. This is one of several paintings we have by Elsie Palmer Payne. This is called Lilies in the Window, Calla Lilies in the Window. It was painted about 1948, 1950, and it shows a modernist approach that she developed later in her career. She and Edgar met in 1912 in San Francisco, where she was from, and they got married a couple years later in Chicago. And they were a very close team. They went everywhere together. They had one daughter, a woman named Evelyn Payne Hatcher, and in the old days, it wasn't really a good idea to have the wife and the husband compete against each other if they were both artists. So somehow the man got to paint in oils, which were what was more readily exhibited and sold, and the woman got to paint in watercolors. So the first part of Elsie's career is all in water-based media, essentially gouache. And when Edgar went to the Sierras, Evelyn and her mother, Elsie, went with them. Evelyn, the daughter, talked a lot about how she would accompany them on their trips. But if Edgar was painting beautiful oil paintings of the Sierra Nevada mountains, Elsie was doing the same thing, but in gouache. And when they went to New Mexico, she did a lot of beautiful gouaches of New Mexico. Gouache, if you're not familiar with it, is a type of water-based medium. It's like watercolor, but it's opaque. It's been thickened so that you can't see the pencil lines underneath. In traditional watercolors, you draw an image on paper and then you color it with a watercolor and you can still see the lines. With gouache, it's thickened, so it has more of a consistency like oil paint, but it's still water-based. So they went to Europe in 1922, and Elsie went along and did her gouaches of France and Italy and Switzerland. They returned to Europe in 1928, and she went along also. And the career pretty well went that way until sometime about 1932, when they had a tremendous falling out, and they separated. They never got divorced, but they separated. They went their own way. And Elsie, at the time, said, in effect, darn it, I'm going to go ahead and paint in oils. And she did. This is an oil painting, but she started painting in oils, and she focused on most of the Depression-era subjects, like the inner city and people and places like farms, but no, not so many landscapes anymore. So she had a pretty good career as a painter. She was mostly a teacher, and she had a lot of students. And in 1945, Edgar developed cancer. And Elsie decided that she was going to have to take care of Edgar, so he moved in with her, and she took care of him for the last 2 years of his life. He died in 1947. And ever the dutiful wife, after Edgar's death, Elsie dedicated herself to exhibits of Edgar's work and selling of Edgar's work and making him pretty much the important artist that he is today. And a lot of that is because Elsie concentrated very much on making Edgar an important painter. So this is called Calla Lilies in the Window, and it's assumed to be from her house, looking into the yard. And on the window, there's these 5 calla lilies. It's a very modernist style. There's a lot of simplicity in the forms, and there's simplicity in the colors, and it's more of a painting of design. There's a very strong design element as the flowers come out of the vase, as opposed to being a realistic display of the flowers in terms of depth and color. This painting has an interesting kind of sexual connotation to it with those calla lilies. And then in the background with that fountain, there's this sense of a little bit of eroticism. So I think that was a part of what was going on in the arts in those days. Anyway, when she died, her daughter Evelyn inherited the estate, and that would be the estate of both Elsie and Edgar. And Evelyn also devoted a good part of her time to make her mother and her father famous. Her father was pretty famous, but she decided that she was going to do a lot to make her mother known as an artist. And in the mid-1880s, she visited my gallery. At the time, it was Peterson Gallery in Beverly Hills. And she and I talked several times, and we agreed to do a retrospective exhibition of Elsie Palmer Payne. And as part of that exhibition, this book was published. And this is the first book completely dedicated to Elsie Palmer Payne. The book was written by she and I. We worked together on this book, and we had the retrospective exhibition, and we sold quite a few paintings. So she is a good artist. She has a completely different feel, more of the California scene of the Depression era, focusing on people and everyday life. So this is what she's best known for. She was also a sculptor, but she never really cast anything in bronze. She worked in clay. After she died, 4 of her pieces were cast by DeRue's Fine Arts in Bellflower. By the way,